All right, guys. Okay, cool. Can everybody hear me? Everybody's good. Technology is working in my favor maybe today. So I thank you again for joining us for another Impact and E-commerce webinar. This webinar series is really meant to to allow us to create space to dive into all things e-commerce and impact and giving back related. And just to very quickly introduce myself, I'm Mel Lubey, and I'm the Chief Impact Officer here at DailyKarma. Our app Shop for Good is part compliance, part marketing, and part technology, allowing our partners to easily support the charities that they are passionate about through different campaigns ranging from donate for discount to rounding up your purchase to the nearest dollar or donating a percentage of sales. And last week, we provided an overview on how to pick a gift pack campaign based on your company's goals, both from your marketing goals to your philanthropic goals. And this week, we wanted to pull back a little bit and actually start discussing some of the best practices for choosing a charity to support. This is actually one of my favorite topics because, like most things, there's no formula, there's no exact right answer. It's nuanced and it really varies from brand to brand. And so for this, I've invited two of our brand partners to join me, Jemma Lee from Charged and Etica, and Mike Pasley, who's the founder of Idea Nest, which has three partners under it, or three brands under it rather, Famous in Real Life, Allegiant Goods, and Casual Surplus. And my hope is that they'll be able to share with us some of the ways they've navigated internally for their brands, and it'll provide some guidance on how you might take this in internally. There's definitely a lot to consider, when it comes to choosing the charity you support. Do you support one charity? Do you support multiple charities? Do you switch it out? Do you stay consistent? And those that change their charity out monthly or quarterly to support different initiatives, and those that actually choose to select one organization and stay true to that all the way through, are very varied, and there's a lot of different factors that go into that. So they're all great paths, and our hope is that by the end of this that you'll definitely have a better understanding. So let's dive in. What I'd love to do is invite each of you to introduce yourselves, and I'd also like, just to kind of frame this a little bit, we'll actually be sharing some live time examples of how your different companies are kind of giving back towards the end of our webinar today. So Ms. Jemma, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. My name is Jemma, and I'm a brand marketing e-commerce strategist for small to mid-sized brands, specializing in fashion, jewelry, and the wellness space. And the two brands that I'll be touching on today, like Mel mentioned, one is Etica, which is a fashion-forward women's jewelry brand, and the other is Charged, which is a wellness brand. Wellness lifestyle brand. So excited to be here.
Awesome. And thanks for coming. And Mike.
So I'm Mike Pasley. I'm the founder of Idea Nest. We're a house of three print-on-demand apparel brands selling graphic t-shirts and other apparel. And so we've been in business for about 3 years and sort of have different brands that appeal to different niches, and so that has given us an opportunity to get involved with a pretty wide range of different types of fundraising opportunities.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. And I, have to say one of my other favorite parts of my job is getting to know partners like yourselves, because I think that you all bring so much background and knowledge into this, your perspectives. But like Mike, you were saying that you used to actually work in the nonprofit space. So I feel like that's going to be really interesting to hear. And Jemma, as you're navigating this for kind of two separate brands or multiple brands, kind of really interested to hear on your perspective on that. So my first question to you both is, can you talk to me about like the first give back campaign that you launched? Like what was your experience in selling this to either your internal stakeholders, like on your side, Jemma, or, to your internal team, Mike? Who would like to start?
I can start with that. So really the first fundraiser that we did through online sales was to support a local charity. We were approached, and I was doing sort of an event sponsorship with them to sponsor their t-shirt booth. The charity was the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, but the local chapter of that. We have a national presence with our brands, or international really. We sponsored their T-shirt tent for this event, and part of this kind of relationship we were forging, decided to say, hey, let's try. They have a blood cancer awareness month, which is September, and so I said, hey, let's try to do a on-site donation fundraiser. And so that was our first attempt. We connected the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society to our science collection that kind of like focuses on some like humorous, like funny math and science t-shirts, but kind of runs a gamut from like environmentalism to medicine to astrology and everything in between. I would say that we had a little bit bigger expectations for it ahead of time than what we were able to fundraise. And I think that there was, the selection of the charity that we picked, we definitely learned a lot that it just didn't really have the biggest draw for our audience that we really expected. And we didn't see much of an uptick in this specific collection. We still raised over $1,000 through this initiative, which is great, but definitely like a bit of a learning experience to find that right cohesion between what would appeal to the audience and help kind of like boost sales and thus more donations through that.
Interesting. So what I find was in this is actually, I think, a great question to pose. It's like national organizations versus local organizations. Right? Like, and it seems like in your experience, maybe that national organization or that more localized organization didn't necessarily have as like broad ranging appeal in this particular circumstance. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, definitely. And like from the other side, like they were more helpful in terms of like, if we went to the National Leukemia Society and we said, hey, we're going to raise $5,000, we're not going to get an email back. But for us to do that with a local company, we definitely will. And they'd be excited and be able to offer a little bit more resources to that. So it had some benefit there, but, at the same time, they didn't have necessarily a huge following to begin with. So, that online kind of initiative that we didn't really help us gain much more traction within, the local community, or like, getting awareness within Tampa where we're located, that versus the event sponsorship, which we know definitely did, where we were handing out flyers and like had a coupon code that we, saw redemptions on and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely with that, it helped, it was successful in that we raised money, but it definitely didn't draw that segment of customers that we had for this math and science collection to feel any more encouraged to make a purchase that month.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think that's really interesting. It's like understanding kind of your in-person, like how you select a charity to benefit kind of maybe in a more in-person event versus something kind of more digitally and online, and also that test of kind of seeing how these different customers kind of resonate with that. So I think that's a really good experience, and on the flip side, where again, I feel like this is also nuanced is, sometimes because that question gets posed a lot internally, like, do we support national versus local? And I oftentimes advise our partners to go back to their campaign goals, like what is, and also the story that we're trying to tell. One instance that comes to mind is a partner of ours on the onset at COVID. He was a local artisan and had a lot of t-shirts. He made local t-shirts. He partnered with a local food bank, but the way in which they posed this was that, it was like $1 equals 4 meals fed. And so they were able to craft kind of that impact message around it. We're saying $1, help us in our goal of raising of serving 10,000 meals. And I think sometimes on that local level that can be really powerful, but like you said, when you're looking at kind of a national and a broad scale organization such as yourself, sometimes that local level is tricky, and the only way to really determine that is by trial and error. So it's good that you kind of tried it out and that there was definitely benefit raised because you raised money for the organization, but ultimately it seems like you're kind of shifting in a different direction. And Jemma, I'd love to hear your experience as well.
Yeah. So I think for both Etica and Charged, we started off with running or being part of your month-long Mother's Day campaign last year, Mel. And for Etica specifically, because Etica and Charged are two very different brands that I work with. And for Etica, it was just before launching the Wear with Confidence campaign. Obviously Etica is a very women's forward jewelry brand. And we were just brainstorming internally. How do we push that further? How do we help celebrate womanhood further? And it was a great launching off point for Etica in terms of knowing data of engagement and just actual checkout of if people were actually going to donate to Shop for Good. So it was a great learning curve in that sense. And for Charged, Charge was built on the idea of giving back as one of their core business models. And they already had a Charged fund. And what DailyKarma did was help automate the whole process, which in itself is an amazing thing, especially if you're a small business. Like everyone is always running really lean. So alleviating that process in itself was just huge.
Awesome. And I'm curious to know what those internal discussions were about, when you were presenting this forward, because I think oftentimes partners are we want to give back, but also how do we help sell this idea of the charities that we should support to our internal team? Because I think it's important to make sure that everybody is buying off, both your internal stakeholders as well as your customers. So can you speak to that at all? What any internal discussions were about, or were you just nope, this is amazing, this is what we're doing?
Well, it all started with the Wear with Confidence campaign. We knew that we wanted Wear with Confidence to be kind of the new brand motto moving forward. And it was really the discussion of how do we as a brand, as Etica, distinguish ourselves against other female accessories brand. There's so many, the jewelry space is really diluted. So how do we as a brand differentiate ourselves? And Etica has always celebrated women in terms of, all shapes, bodies, sizes. And it was one of those things where we knew it's a very women-driven industry and a company. And we knew that we wanted to send this message of Wear with Confidence. And, working with DailyKarma just kind of came as an opportunity for us to figure out if this will really help drive our brand forward in that sense.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And so I think, that in and of itself, it's in both of these instances, it seems like what I'm hearing as far as Charged and Etica goes is that there was this idea of a brand philosophy. And then how does that translate into other touch points, right? Other touch points within the consumer experience, and how does that translate into giving back? Whereas Mike, it seems like it was on the initial campaign was more about possibly, having this product and how do we make sure that we're factoring in a charitable component as well as this local partnership, which I think is really interesting. And, when it comes to this idea of, which charities even fall under this, which charity to support for, say, your your Wear with Confidence campaign. I think, we talk to our partners a lot about pillars. What are the pillars? What does either this particular collection stand behind, or what are the particular pillars that your organization stand behind? And I think a lot of the questions that we like to encourage people to ask are what are the causes that our customers care about? What do we know about them? Who are they? And also then, on the flip side, what are the causes that our key stakeholders are cared about? Because if those two things aren't in alignment, nothing flies. If you're, and I think it's important that both internally and externally, everybody is speaking the same language. So, and then also, which I feel like both of you were able to do, is you're testing quickly. use social. You know, I think the other thing that we often like to recommend is if you're not sure which organization might fly, either use social and use surveys and engage that customer in the process, or use tools like actually both of you are using, where you're allowing that customer to tell you which customers choose. So I think that actually is kind of a good segue, and I'm going to share my screen and showcase how both of you guys have kind of integrated this lifetime. So are you guys able to see my screen okay? Okay, good, just checking. So we'll start with famous in real life. I know, Mike, that you've done several campaigns kind of product tied, where it's like certain products want to benefit certain charities. And what I love that what you're doing right now is you have, your wonderful Nasty Woman sweatshirt that you have up, and then you're letting the customer know that 10% of their sales will be donated to up to 5 charities. So when I select this, what I'm able to see here is that the customer can actually choose where that 10% goes. And so I'd love to know, like, talk us through your thought process, like what went into thinking, like, why these charities, how does that relate back to kind of, the purpose within this particular collection?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So this particular campaign came up recently. I actually just noticed a spike in sales in this shirt, and hadn't like read news headlines recently or anything, but after Biden's vice presidential selection was announced, other comments came out, and so we saw an uptick in these shirts being sold. So I was able to kind of turn around quickly to come out with a little mini campaign to kind of like nurture to that and see what we could do from a fundraising standpoint. So the selection in here really kind of went towards, the way that I kind of identify these are, first I try to think about like who the really core customer is, and those early adopters of the product, and make an appeal to like that small subsection first, and think about that as kind of like that primary appeal. And with that, the mass appeal will kind of come with it. But always kind of treating that segment of customers as kind of like the first set that I want coming in, and finding the most interest in this, and what's going to appeal to them the most. And so I tried to select a good grouping of charities that kind of supported the health, equality, and advancement of women, and that was sort of my parameters on my selection. And so I just wanted to get a good mix, and I don't know, I think I did a pretty good job here with that. And with that too, like, I was trying to pick organizations that would have some recognition on their own too. And obviously the great thing about using DailyKarma is that I don't need to forge relationships with these organizations. We can just turn around and do this right away, and don't have to worry about, potentially like using a charity's name as though we forged out a personal relationship with them in some way. It's a little bit more detached in that, like, we're not doing this on behalf of them. It's our shirt, but we're donating a portion of the sales to support them. So it's really great just to be able to kind of like try out a campaign. Like it took me an afternoon to put this together, and get the advertising and all the other pieces out together to try to see what we can do. So that aspect was really great.
That's awesome. And I have to commend, like, I live in this charity realm. I think that these are great organizations, and that ability of understanding that certain customers might appeal to certain, to certain organizations, or, if not, everything is split evenly here. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting about what you said, Mike, is that like it was really product led, which is cool. Like you're noticing, oh wow, all of a sudden this particular shirt is selling. What's going on? Because especially due to the nature of your business. And then how can we, the part of that like as a do-gooder, it's like, and then how can we help this benefit, the greater good? Like how can we put something around this that actually makes this product more impactful, other than just like giving people that want to wear a Nasty Woman shirt a really cool, Nasty Women organization or Nasty Women Shirt. So I love that. And I think that it's really broad reaching and definitely appealing to a lot of different, audiences within here. Thank you. That's great. And I want to pop into to Charge now. I think we'll show you that Charge fund in a second. So Jemma, I'd love to kind of hear from you too. Like, talk me through the same process. Like right now, you're utilizing a tool of ours called Donate for Discount, which is allowing that customer to receive an incentive in exchange for giving. But I'd love to kind of hear like your internal thought process about like these particular charities that you're supporting and how Charged is navigating that.
Yeah. So Charge has always leaned into social giving. So whatever that's happening in the world, globally, locally, Charge was built on the aspect of giving back. So currently, as we all know, there is a global pandemic going on. And even before we chose this specific charity, the COVID-19 Response Fund specifically, we've gotten customer requests on giving back to charities that support, COVID-19 in terms of, there was a lot of question about like, are you guys donating masks? Are you guys like, where, and also Charge is an LA-based brand. So we were also getting questions about like locally how people could donate to. And it's part of Charge, like emitting these like shop for good, do good aspect as a whole brand in general. So we were getting these customer questions and responses and seeing where they can donate. And it was just a no-brainer in terms of supporting a charity that, gives back to COVID-19 responses. So that's where COVID-19 came from. And Black Lives Matter, again, LA-based, there was a whole movement that was just epically huge in LA. Mel, you're also based in LA. I think we also spoke about this personally. Yes. And there was just no way that we could not respond to giving back to a charity that was doing such a good social for good. So those are the two charities. And we also do have a way for some like our customers to like either split or select. Mm-hmm. So it gives them choices on where they want to donate. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm curious to know like what you're hearing across the board. Like, do you hear that feedback on social where, where customers are responding to the choices that either brands, and this goes out to both of you, kind of either brands are making from the charity selection where moments are like, cool, we really did this right. And like, we're proud of this. And also I think adversely, it's always good to talk about those times where maybe the organization didn't quite hit or maybe you like negative feedback. Have you received any across the board that you want to share?
I mean, with e-commerce, it's always a marriage between what you see in the back end, the analytics and the customer feedback. And, analytics is a little bit easier to read. Mm-hmm. And with customer feedback, we've only really received positive feedback from everything that we've been doing in terms of supporting. You definitely Charge specifically rotates charities either quarterly or monthly, and we definitely see kind of higher engagement or higher donations in specific categories versus others, but nothing really negative, which is a great response to what we're doing as a brand. Yeah. And as you said, if you make that personal decision to give back as a brand and as, a realtor, and you lean into it, you just have to, as long as it is authentic on who you are as a brand and what you're doing, you should not get real negative feedback.
That's true. I think authenticity, this is like truthfully, like, I think this is the year of authenticity. It's like people, good or bad, right? Like everyone, like just due to the nature of 2020, where, you know, we're being pushed and pulled in a lot of different directions and so many things are coming to light. I think one of the things that I see partners teeter between is like, how do we make sure that we're doing things that are very true to the brand and creating positive impact in the world without necessarily appearing opportunistic, which I feel like both of your companies are doing really well, because you're responding in live time and you're listening to what those customer needs are, whether it's from looking at how particular products are selling and then how to put that narrative around it so that you can be giving back, or listening to customer feedback and going from there. So I think that is really cool. And then do you have, I guess, kind of as we're kind of getting to the end of our 30 minutes where we're talking about how different, you know, how you guys have selected these charities and what this is meaning to you, like, do you have advice for partners who are struggling, you know, to pick their first charity to support, and where might you recommend that they?
I think my main recommendation is to, I mean, your main priority should always be true to who you are as a brand. So go back to your brand mission. Ask yourself, does X, Y, and Z help drive, grow, or evolve your brand value? If so, implement it and make sure you're consistently implementing it even after the quote unquote trend is over, right? And that's kind of how you show authenticity and prove it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that we take a little bit of a different approach because there's the nature of our brand being so much different. Where Famous in Real Life, we have niches for everything from, you know, special holidays, you know, just people buying like ugly sweaters and stuff like that. But, you know, we have math and science, we have pride, we have 4th of July, we have TV and movie and entertainment, and all these different like sub niches that our customers are segmented into. And so it's nearly impossible for us to pick a cause or a group of charities that we can align our brand with as, you know, a broad kind of connection. And so going back to kind of what I was referring to with like how I was picking the charities for this, you know, specific fundraiser that we put out this week, is that, you know, we think about this subcategory and what's going to have the strongest appeal to that, you know, most into it, like diehard fans of that niche, and construct it that way. And we were able to kind of, you know, transition into all these different campaigns that way. And so the way that, you know, we kind of decide how to, you know, move these charities around is really more based on the customer appeal than it is the relationship that it has with our brand.
I think that's like, I love that, like, how different both of these perspectives are, and how equally they work, because, you know, like Mike, I think what I'm hearing as a result of part of this is like, it really is based on like the makeup of the brand. Like, if you have kind of this broad appeal, sometimes then it's good to allow it to be like more product led, or be like the products are more of the pillars for how that you are giving back, and one way to look at it. Whereas like with Jemma, it's like with the two organizations that you're representing, it's more like kind of like brand DNA, which both are awesome. And frankly, at the end of the day, if funds are being raised and you're able to make that connection with the customer, that to me is what matters. I saw something really interesting pop up into the chat, and I want to kind of open this up for discussion. Arian, you said that, I'm reading it, said, I'm about to introduce an unbiasedly progressive skincare company called Earth and Halo, and the first charity will be Planned Parenthood. You've been advised to stay away from it. Like, I'd love to hear, like, so what it brings up for me is this idea of like controversial organizations. At what point do you have any advice for Arian? Like, what would you say?
So my opinion on that, if what you're saying about introducing unbashedly progressive skincare company, then be unbashedly progressive with your selection. Yeah. That's what's going to appeal to those customers. Yeah. It's a little bit different for us because, you know, I mean, we try not to take a side too much. And because we have that really, big mass appeal, we don't want to limit ourselves necessarily. I mean, we try to pick the side of good, but
I like that.
that's kind of where we stand. But making that polarization can be a good tool. So I would say don't try to avoid that if that's your goal.
I 100% agree. It sounds like being unabashedly progressive is who you are as a brand. So you should definitely pick a charity that aligns with who you are as a brand.
Yeah, I mean, that's my, that's my sentiment too. Like, I think it's a really tough line to walk. Like, what are we personally passionate about? And also what are the organizations we represent? What are they passionate about? And when that's fully in alignment, where like the skincare company is unbashably progressive, you're not necessarily going to appeal to people that aren't unabashedly, if I said the word right, progressive. So I say, make a choice and double down on it. And I think your customers will tell you if it's resonating. Like, you'll see that if you're and ask them, and I feel like the best thing that we can do, and what talks about like how we're picking charities, is to ask and in Jemma's standpoint, you're letting the data show, and Mike's standpoint, you're letting the product show, which is ultimately data. Like, looking at those metrics and looking at those numbers, as well as the more softer side of things, by just engaging your customers in the process. Like, ask that customer as they're purchasing, or follow up with them. Like, I'd love to know how you feel. What causes do you care about? And one thing that came up in a previous discussion recently is like that idea of sometimes don't be afraid to reach out to that customer, because I think when you ask them, they tell you. We see that internally at Shop for Good, like when it comes to product related things, but I think especially when it comes to charity, like, they're going to tell you what they're passionate about. So, are there any other questions or comments, feedback? Okay, cool. I guess, okay, my last question, Mike and Jemma, like, as we are approaching, there's going to be a lot of discussion, and I already feel like it's starting to bubble up, but like, what are the holidays look like for brands as far as we're, giving back? Like, do you have any thoughts to share as far as how brands might be able to start thinking about the charity that they support from, say, September until the end of the year?
You have anything on that, John?
You're like,
I feel like 2020 has been so unpredictable. There's no norm about what's happening currently. We're really taking it a month at a time, and we're making sure we're prepared for the worst, as well as being hopeful for the best aspects and best results. So we will let you know in September.
Yeah, I will say, what I'm seeing kind of across the board is that there's a lot of different. One, obviously, COVID is never going to, we are still in the throes of COVID-19. So my advice to our partners that are kind of trying to figure out the rest of the year, it could be, maybe we stick with COVID, or something that is continuing, or racial justice, if that's something that you've been supporting previously. But there's also, we are in an election year. There's a lot of really great nonpartisan organizations to support. Breast cancer prevention is coming up, and then just the holidays in general. I think there's a whole discussion about, which is another webinar for another day, about what does giving back look like during the holidays. But if there's any other questions.
Yeah, no, I like to speak to that though, is for e-commerce companies, Q4 is really big for us, but it also is for the majority of charities as well. So there's opportunity to include things around Thanksgiving sales and holiday sales, and Giving Tuesday, and the charitable giving that people have goes right in line with the increased spending on regular products too. So it's an opportunity that you want to definitely have included in your marketing plans, looking at how to finish the year out strong.
I fully agree with that. Yeah, because, and especially since everything's online, I feel like so much of our e-commerce, our shopping experience now and possibly for quite some time is all going to be so digitally focused. So I think that's an excellent point, Mike. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up, guys? Well, I am I'm so grateful that you guys chose to spend a half hour of your time with me today. To all of our attendees, if there's any questions that you have, we'll follow up with you via email. We'll keep you posted on future webinars. We have some cool things cooking up over here. And if there's anything that you want to hear us talk about, we're all ears. So let us know. And thank you again for your time. And we look forward to helping you get back. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.